And that allows me to set the tools on the platform and get the starting angle where I start grinding the same every time. I have a problem over-rotating my tools when I grind them. And so I just ground a little flat on the side of my wood beater gouges to make them a little easier to grind. So, okay, I was talking about what I do to smooth. And I'm going to get that handle out of the way. Okay, there are two ways that I can smooth with the gouge. One is I can use my wood beater gouge, but use it drop the handle way down so I'm shearing. I'll touch the bevel and then just rotate the cutter into the wood until it just begins to cut. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. And then bring it around. And that will produce quite a smooth cut. The other thing I can do is, and that's what Mike Mahoney would do. The other thing I can do is do what Stuart Batty would do, and that is come in with my 55-degree gouge. And by the way, he doesn't grind his gouges at 55. He grinds them all at 40. But I find that a 55-degree gouge, the nose of that gouge does not get up under the grain as much and pull it up. Okay, so a little bit less sharp nose on the gouge tends not to get up under the fibers of the wood and pull them up. And with highly figured wood, that can make quite a bit of difference. So I'm just going to pick up that cut where I left off with the other thing. Getting a little bounce there. Getting a little vibration there, actually. Now, I mentioned that I've got a slate undercut for the rim, so I'm going to turn around and come in from the other way because I'm now cutting slightly downhill. Did what I just said make sense? Why I came in? Okay. All right. So let's see what we got. We probably still got some tear out, but it's probably a lot better than it was. You know, we've got some tear out right in here, so let's take another pass at it. Getting a little vibration, I'm not sure why. Yeah, could be. Actually, that's a good point. Particularly with something that doesn't have a lot of dish, and particularly with highly figured wood, it will tend to move as I'm cutting it. And I've seen pieces that moved. By the time I got done cutting the backside and turning it over, it's running out 1/8 of an inch. It can move quite a lot, and what's happening is that as you remove the stresses from the wood, as you cut the wood away, because all wood has stresses in it, as you remove those stresses, the thing will actually move quite a bit. Yeah, I'm getting quite a bit of bounce here. Okay, let's see what we got. So I expect to have a little tear out, but I don't want a lot of tear out because, again, I don't want to remove bulk wood with my scrapers. I just want to smooth, and that looks pretty good. I don't have much tear out there. I've got a few little inconsistencies there, a little bump there, a little valley there, but Those will be gone in no time flat with the scraper, and that's why I like my scraper so well. I'm going to use this scraper on the back side because I'm working with curves. Come up and look at it, anybody that wants to. You'll see that it's got a few little lumps and bumps on it, but they'll be gone. They'll be gone in no time flat. Okay. I'm going to move my tool rest back a little bit because I want my scraper to be sitting on the flat part of the scraper, not on the bevel, because it will slide away from me if it's on the bevel. So I'll move the tool rest back a little bit. I'll come in very carefully on that little shoulder and start. As I said, I want to get that perfect because if it's not, it's very difficult to sand. And then you can see I'm resting my hand on the tool rest to help me control the scraper. If you'll notice where my right hand is, it's against my chest or my stomach to stabilize the scraper on the back end. And I'm just drawing that scraper around the curve. And what it allows me to do is get that curve exactly the way I want it. And you can see, what it's producing. It's not producing dust. It's producing shavings. So it is cutting cleanly. You can also note that I'm not pushing the scraper into the wood. If I have to push the scraper into the wood, it'll do a lot more damage than good. And that's why I'm constantly sharpening it, because if you have to push it into the wood because it's not cutting, then it'll just tear the wood terribly. Whereas if you just float it over the wood and keep that burr on it just cuts beautifully. Now this is where I was getting the bounce. I want to make sure I get rid of all of that bounce. Okay, and when I get out to where my undercut is, I got to go back in the other direction. So I'll go from the rim down in. And you can see how absolutely easy this is. I mean, there's what you're doing at this point is much more in your head and in your eye than it is in your hands. I mean, it's so easy to control the tool that it's dead easy to do it. Okay? And just that quickly, I now have a surface which is pretty darn smooth. Now I'm going to hit it again. I can see a little bit of a discontinuity there, another one there. I can feel that I've got a little bit of a lump there. Got a little bit of tear out right in here that I need to remove. A little bit more there again. So I'll take a couple more passes at it, but you can see it hasn't taken me long to do this. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, still got a little bit of tear out right there. Need to get rid of that. And I'm using the flat nose of the tool to sort of get it positioned right before I begin to scrape. So I just set that flat part of the tool down on the wood, and then I begin to move the tool over the wood. Still got a little bit of tear out right there. Let me just get rid of that. Because That's enough tear out. I don't want to stand down. Okay, that
Can you
was.
read the small print of that marriage license? Talked about wood.
I honestly don't remember, but it was not terribly expensive. I do remember that. It was,
How much was the wood that you just bought at the Gardner place? Because you talk about that source of wood too.
well, there's a place in Gardner, Colorado called Collector Specialty Woods, and they have just opened a store in Denver, and they have just lovely stuff in there. And I bought 2 big chunks of hard maple. One piece was a plank about that wide and about 10 feet long, and the other piece is a plank about so wide and about so thick. And that plank is well figured, tiger hard maple. And then I bought 2 pieces of Honduras mahogany. When was the last time you saw chunks of Honduras mahogany that were big enough to turn? These are this big around and about that thick. I have one of them in the car. At lunchtime. Which car's yours?
It's easy to tell that Colorado place.
Yeah, but it's locked.
And when did you change that stop?
It's
Go ahead,
not
what was the paperwork part?
I don't remember, but it was not terribly expensive. I think
And what it really was.
maybe $150 for the piece, and it's big enough to get about 8 platter blanks out of it. So $20 a shot, maybe.
Wow.
Not bad.
How about the stuff that you get out of Bow River? How
Yeah,
much
this,
are those?
these blanks, as I mentioned, my wood normally comes from Bow River. That's a pretty nicely figured AAA big leaf maple blank, and that, I think, I paid $13.67 or 68 cents per board foot. Okay. This is 3.36 board feet. So 39, 45 bucks right in there somewhere. That's why I don't use a tenth, and I'll explain it. By doing it this way, I can cut the bottom of the foot, I can cut my recess, I can do my shaping here, and I do not have to blend this curve in with the foot later on. It's done. I can do the whole foot right now without needing to blend it later. Where I'll blend it is on the inside of the foot, okay? But it's much easier to blend those curves because you're not actually matching curves. And you've got a little bit of run out, and you always do get a little bit of run out, particularly with cold jaws, which is the way I usually do it. I could have used a vacuum chuck, and I could have tinkered with it until I got it exactly running through, maybe. But cold jaws are dead easy to use. You slap the thing in it, tighten the jaws, it's ready to go. So what I'm doing here is I'm blending this curve with that flat. If I'm not absolutely on center, you won't see it unless it's really gross. I mean, if the width of the underside of the foot varied quite a bit, you would see it. But cold jaws are pretty accurate. Does everybody know what I meant by cold jaws?
There's one right there. He's got one right there.
Well, yeah, this is mine, which is big enough to hold this platter. When you put it in this type of jaw, it's really easy to get it centered. It won't run exactly true, but it'll run close enough that if you're not trying to blend a complex curve, you won't see it at all. That's really the primary reason why I use a recess rather than a tendon. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Show how it goes in the...
I'll do that later.
Why the tape?
I'll do that. Oh, because if I were in my shop, I would be sanding this right now. I don't want to do any sanding in here. But at this point in the process, I would sand the bottom of the foot, I would sand the cove, I would sand the little step, I would sand the entire surface. I'd also go ahead and make the chamfers on the rim. Right, I'd begin to do that right now. Since I'm not going to do any sanding, I'm not going to do any of that, obviously. But that's what I would do. Then when I turned the front of it, I would completely sand the front of it before I turned it back over and put it in the cold jaws. Sanded, the wood is now completely sanded to 600. You don't want any marring in it at all. And the tape just gives me a little bit of softness to the face of the chuck, enough that it doesn't normally mar the wood. It will sometimes mar, and when it does, it's a little more handwork because, again, it's got to end up being perfectly finished. So if it does mar it, you got to work it out, and the tape seems to stop it from marring. Okay. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is just kind of look at this thing and decide how much rim I want.
Okay. Yeah.
So just going to put a pencil on it. Okay, that looks about right. That looks about enough rim for a platter that size. Everybody like that, or you want it narrower or wider?
I like it.
Beg your pardon?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Got a crowd please in the front.
Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is work on the rim because I want as much wood in the middle to stabilize it while I cut the rim. Once I've got the rim nice and smooth, then I will cut the interior out of it. But I want to get the rim right now. Oh my gosh! Here's the wrong platform. That's my 45-degree platform. I don't want to do that to that. I want about a millimeter of distance between the. Fortunately, it's crown and heel, not the tip. What I was going to say is I was just going to clean up the rim, but the thing was vibrating so badly, I decided I'd clean up the whole surface and try to get it settled down a little bit, and that has settled it down. Okay, it felt like I got a little bit of tear out there at one point. Oh, I've got a little bit of a knot there. Uh-huh. Okay. Could explain why it felt funny there. Still got a little raw wood up here. Okay. I want just enough slope on it that it doesn't look like it's sagging. Okay? If you come in flat, the platter will look like it's sagging. So I want to get it just enough inward curvature, downward curvature to stop it from looking flat. Still got a little bit of raw wood up here, so let me take one more pass at it. Here it's shuddering, it's already beginning to move. Okay. Still got a little raw wood up there, but I'll get that out in a second. Okay. I'm going to move to a scraper to smooth that rim, and I'm going to use my widest scraper because that is the one that is the flattest across the nose. Okay? See how much that piece of wood has moved already. It's shuddering.
Can we go from the outside to the inside?
Well, I'm cutting slightly downhill. So I'm going to get a slightly better cut if I cut this way rather than coming back. However, this is actually flat enough that I'm really cutting sideways, so I can go in both directions. I can go in either direction. When I start cutting down the side, I really would be better off to go down the side rather than up the side. But even on the side, sometimes I'll work it uphill just because it's slightly easier to control the tool when I'm pulling it toward me than pushing it forward. So, theoretically I ought to be cutting in this direction, but when you're cutting on a surface that's fairly flat, it really it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. That's a very good question. Okay. I've got a little bit of the original surface right there, but I'm not going to do anything about it because I'm now going to cut the rim, and I'm going to scrape it at 45 on this side and on this side, and then blend the curves. Okay. So I'm holding the cutting surface at about 45. And I'm moving across the nose of the tool to get fresh burr. Thank you. Fresh burr on the wood. Now I'm just looking to make sure that the top and the bottom match. And then I'll just draw the scraper around to round out the curve. Now I need to sharpen this scraper because I'm probably producing some tear out right now. But until I get the curve fairly close to where I want it, I don't really care if I get a little tear out. Once I start getting close to the final curve, I'll sharpen up. Notice that I'm cutting toward the center. That puts less stress on the wood and less stress on the shot of the blade. This is not producing a good cut. I don't care at this point. Sure that my flute is right up and down or it's going to skate backwards. Once I get it in, I'll open the flute. As I'm going across here, I'm cutting pretty much into end grain, and you can hear that the wood does not like this. Where I am with my curve. So I'm actually going to, when I start, I'm going to start with the middle of the scraper cutting. I'm going to watch the right end of that very carefully to make sure that I don't hang it, because if I do hang it, it'll lift the thing up and slam it back down on the tool rest. It can be pretty dangerous. But it will allow me to get the bottom of the platter to match the curvature of the scraper. And you remember when I showed the pictures, I showed that it's slightly domed. It is very slightly domed, and if I do it right, I'll get the center of the platter to match the contour of the scraper, and it will allow me to get it completely smooth curve. No high spots, no low spots. So that's what I'm going to start doing. As I move out, I'll move to the green scraper, which is slightly more domed, and then I'll move to the yellow scraper, which is the one that's ground with a curve on it, and that I'll use that curve to cut this curve, okay? And I'll use the flat tip of the tool, this part, I'll use that to index off of the part that I've already cut smoothly to make sure that I don't create a high or low spot. Okay, so these things are, I know they look like they're just not very precisely ground, but in actual fact, the dimensions are quite tightly controlled. Okay. and you'll see me feeling for that burr every time I sharpen it to make sure that it's uniform. Okay, I'm a little too low. Still about an eighth of an inch low. Okay, you'll see that I'm well over the center, but I'm making sure that the right corner doesn't touch. But by doing that, I can guarantee that I'm not going to have either a divot or a bump in the middle. So, you just got to be exceedingly careful not to let that right corner drag. Because if you do, you're not going to like what happens next. And now I'm just dragging it sideways, and I actually am dragging it slightly uphill, which I should not do, but it's easier to control the tool if you're pulling it towards your body. It's easier to control it than it is if you're pushing it. So, and in this part of the platter, it's so nearly flat that it doesn't seem to make any difference. When I start getting up the edge, it will begin to make more of a difference. Okay, so it's cutting right in the middle as I sweep it. And as long as it's cutting right in the middle, I know that I've got neither a high spot or a low spot. Well, I could have a high spot, but as long as I'm cutting on a broad enough front, I know it's not much of a lump. Okay, I'm almost to the point where the curvature of this is not great, and I really, at this point, need to reverse my direction of cut. So I'm going to go back to the rim. This part right here, right at the rim, is the most critical part of the entire cut. If you don't get that good and smooth, you can't sand it out because you're trying to sand right into end grain. So you really need to make sure that that is smooth as silk with your cutter. So I'll take special care at this, right at the entry point. Make sure my tool is good and sharp. Take very light cuts. Okay, let's see what we got. Not feeling any lumps. It feels pretty good. Maybe a little high right in the middle. Got a little bit of tear out right there. Not much. A little bit. Got a couple of little ridges there. I could sand that out easily, but I can also cut it out. Took it off of the faceplate. I would have sanded the back. I would have sanded this, that, and all the way out to there. And then when I turned the front, I would have sanded all of the front and the rim. Okay? Because once I cut away the foot, I can no longer remount the machine, remount the platter on the lathe. So I want to do all that sanding with it spinning. Then I'll cut this recess here and scrape this whole thing smooth, and then I'll sand that part, which is the only part that has not been sanded at that point. Then I will take a pencil and draw 3 closely spaced circles, take the platter off of the lathe, take it over to the wood burner, sign it, put it back on the lathe, sand away the pencil marks, and then it's ready to finish. I'm not going to do that with this piece, because if I do, I ruin the piece of wood, because I can't remount it if I cut this away.